Corin Grimswell. Corin Grimswell lived in a world built not of brick and mortar, but of moments. His small apartment was a gallery of echoes, each object a curator of a ghost. The chipped blue mug held the steam of his mother's last tea. The frayed armchair still bore the impression of his father's weary form. For Corin, memory was not a thing you recalled, but a place you inhabited, and his palace was vast, beautiful, and unbearably lonely. The central conflict was a quiet one, a slow erosion, the fear that one day a door in this palace would open and reveal only dust. The disruptive event arrived not with a crash, but with a slip of paper. An eviction notice, cold and bureaucratic, taped to his door. The building was being sold, the notice said. He had 30 days. The words were a tremor that ran through the foundations of his world. To leave this apartment was not to move houses, it was to demolish the palace itself, to scatter its relics to the wind. A silent panic, sharp and metallic, bloomed on his tongue. He was being forced to act, to choose between being a caretaker of ghosts or a survivor in the world of the living. The first step into the unknown was a descent into the basement, to a box labelled Before. Inside, he found not just old tax records, but a smaller unmarked box. Within it lay a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon addressed to his father from a woman named AIart, a name he had never heard spoken in their home. The paper was fragile, the ink a faded blue. This was a corridor in his memory palace he never knew existed, a door he had never dared to open. His heart hammered against his ribs. He was no longer just preserving the past, he was hunting for its secrets. The revelation came on the third letter. My dearest, it read, I know we agreed, but I cannot let him go without a fight. He is your son, too. The words did not compute. They were a key that did not fit any lock in his mind. The stakes were no longer about losing a home, they were about losing the very definition of his history. The man he had called father his entire life might not have been. The palace of his memory, his entire reality, was not being renovated. It had been built on a fault line he never knew was there. Corin's greatest enemy had always been the silent, creeping doubt that he was unlovable, that his solitude was deserved. Now, it had a name, abandonment. He faced it in the sterile quiet of a public records office as a kind clerk named Mrs. Evans handed him a birth certificate. In the field for father it read unknown. The fear was a cold stone in his gut. The narrative of his life, the story he had curated with such care, was a beautiful fiction. The enemy was the truth, and it had won. The decisive confrontation was with himself, standing before the box of letters. He could burn them. He could rebury the truth and let the palace stand, a beautiful, intact lie. Or he could accept the new, fractured blueprint. His fingers trembled as he picked up the oldest photograph of his father, young man with Corin's own eyes, smiling with a hope that the future had somehow beaten out of him. Corin made his decision. He would not preserve the palace, he would expand it. He picked up the phone to call the number a private investigator had given him for AIart. The new equilibrium was not peace, but a different kind of complexity. AIart was real. An elderly woman with a gardener's hands and his father's laugh. The story was not one of malice, but of two young people, terrified and poor, make an impossible choice. The palace was not demolished. New wings were built with brighter, more complicated light. Corin still lived amongst his ghosts, but now he was learning their true names. The aftermath was a quieter heart, a heavier but more honest world. He was no longer just a keeper of memories. He was their archivist, and now their student.